have you all join us, and please don't hesitate to share it with your community and friends. Friday, May 1st, we are doing a youth empowerment program, and this is part of our educational program. As you know, in Colorado, the school year has ended and resumed on online schooling, meaning the kids cannot go to school and have a face-to-face interaction with the teacher. So it's an online school. So we know currently all the houses are transformed into offices or school where the parents are becoming teachers, where the older brother and the older sister are becoming teachers. It's a very complicated environment, and it's very difficult. As a parent myself, I'm facing the challenges where you will have 3 kids in the house. It means you have to have 3 separated computers. You need to have 3 separated places in the house in order for the kids to do their online and virtual. And there's a lot of question. We don't know how the kids are gonna graduate. We don't know how the kids are gonna get to the next grade. So we are creating this platform for our students to engage with the teachers and ask questions. But also on Saturday, May 2nd, we are inviting the superintendent of Aura Public School. We are inviting the school board of directors where the parents can engage with them and ask those questions. What is graduation gonna look like? And let them know what is, you know, the current environment, the challenges you are facing, because together, that's the only way we can improve our children's education. So in a nutshell, that's this upcoming event that we have. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the African Leadership Group, or don't hesitate to call me directly. Now let's talk about you know, what brings us here today, which is the business economic opportunity that we are having, and it's part of the so many committees that the African Leadership Group has. So the purpose of the African Leadership Group Business Committee opportunity is to ensure that the African Leadership Group meets its economic impact. As you hear me mention from the beginning, we have 3 layers, and one of them is the economic impact. And we have experts from the community that are part of this committee, and they help put this program together. And we have 3 objectives. One of them is to identify business and economic opportunity, because we know as an immigrant, sometimes we can be in this environment, this opportunity can come by and we don't even know about it. So one of the primary objectives is to help community members to identify those business and economic opportunities. The second point is to create an environment where we can win market, because we know it's all about being able to win a market and have access to those markets. And the third but not least is to have access to a meaningful job opportunity and help create jobs, because we know it's all about being able to have access to the job opportunity. But as a community also, we want to contribute to this country. So we want to create a job as well. So that's why we put together this committee, and you're going to hear about the people that we have that's going to be presenting. So, and we have a very important guest that's going to be joining us, and I will be introducing him shortly, but let me just go over the format and some housekeeping rule. So as I mentioned from the beginning, we won't be able to hear you because we put everybody on mute, because we just want to make sure we have a format where there's no distraction, and we want to make sure that this presentation feels live as much possible. And what we're asking you is, if you have a question, you can use the chat form. So the way it's going to go is after each presenter, so we'll take 3 questions. If the time allows, we can take more. So when you put in your question, Amadou will take your question and we will read it. So that way, the person that you address the question will answer that. So what I ask of you is, if you have a question for the presenter, we'll have their name. And so that way you can directly say, oh, I have a question for this presenter, so they can definitely address it and make sure that they answer the question. So use the chat form. If you are not familiar with it, again, get with Amadou, so he will help you. So for now, and Laurie, I guess, do we have our main guests in?
No, not yet.
Not yet, okay. So yes, so while we're waiting on the main guest, so we will just make sure that people, if you want to try using the chat form, that will be excellent. So we can make sure that it's working. But yes, so if you can just use it to say hello, that would be great. So yes, the presenter that we have. So let me just start doing the presentation of the speakers that we have. So everybody will know while we're waiting on our main guest. So Laurie, if you can bring the screen for the presenters so we can introduce them. All right, so here are the people that we have part of our business committee with intensive background, and you will get to hear from them, and it's truly an honor to have them here. So first, I will start with Solomon Mwanga. Solomon is the chair of the business committee. He's a friend of mine, a mentor of mine that really helped me while I was in banking. And Solomon have a big heart for the community. So Solomon is the vice president, commercial banker for Midwest Bank, and he has over 20 years of banking experience. Solomon is originally from Uganda. His primary responsibility is working alongside customers to enter the growth and overall success of their business financial health. So he's been married for 21 years and has 2 children. He served for 2 years on the Denver Workforce Board, where he was appointed by Mayor Hancock in August 2004. So, and as you can see, he has a big heart for the community, and he is the chair of the business committee. So if anybody is interested in working with this committee or learning more about the committee, so Solomon will be the person to reach out to. Solomon, it's truly an honor to have you part of the community. So thank you. And we have Jamal. Jamal is a very good friend of mine, and that I've met a couple of years ago. And since I met him, he's been involved with the African Leadership Group and making a big difference. So he was born in Washington, D.C., but raised in Colorado. He currently works as an educator at the Community College of Denver, teaching business and entrepreneurship. After receiving his master's degree in organizational management, his specialization in public administration, he was inspired to start a business called Empowering Community Entrepreneurs. In 2016, he became a doctor of education student at Fielding Graduate Schools. So I can tell you that even though he was born here, he will tell you that he is from Liberia because his dad is from Liberia. So he visited Liberia, Abidjan, Ivory Coast, West Africa. He served as an observer, Women's Situation Room. So Jamal is somebody that really have a big heart for the community, and we are very, very fortunate to have you. Thank you so much for everything you do. And we have Tayo Okunde. So Tayo, again, is a longtime friend of mine and originally from Nigeria. So Tayo is an experienced attorney who handles litigation matters for clients across a number of industries. He has appeared before state and federal court as well as administrative court. In his multidisciplinary practice, he has litigated cases involving employment discrimination, wrongful termination. So Tayo also is part of the business committee, but most importantly also, Tayo is the chair of the legal clinic, where every month Tayo and friends of attorney, they volunteer their time to come and meet with members of the community. They can talk to them and get pro bono legal advice. Tayo, we are very fortunate and lucky to have you in the community, and thank you so much for everything you do. We also have Rosie McDonald, and Rosie has been a business consultant and mentor throughout her professional career. She has an extensive experience as an independent consultant, and she currently works for the Colorado Business Immigrant Affairs. And we are very fortunate to have Rosie among us. She is a member of the African Leadership Group, a friend of the community. So we are so, so fortunate to have you among us. So thank you so much. Now, Laurie, do we have our main guest in or?
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you. Now, at this time, I'm about to introduce our main guest, and it's truly an honor to call him a friend. So what I ask of everybody is, please, this is the time that's going to be very important to have your pen and your paper to write your question, to take note. We know in this current environment, we have more questions than we have answers. So that's why it's truly an honor for us to have the Congressman Jason Crow, representative for Colorado's 6th Congressional District. Jason is a friend of mine. Jason is a friend of the community. And since his involvement at the Congress, he worked tirelessly for the community. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce you and read a little bit about his bio so you can know a little bit about his background. So Jason is a former Army Ranger and lawyer. Congressman Jason Crow represents Colorado's 6th Congressional District, encompassing Aurora and part of Adams and Douglas County. Jason works his way through college before enlisting in the Army and serving our country in Iraq and Afghanistan. Upon returning home, Jason struggled to get his veteran benefits, so he went to work helping veterans across Colorado. As an attorney, Jason was named Denver Pro Bono Lawyer of the Year for work helping service members transition from military to civilian life. A proven reformer, Jason is working to strengthen our democracy and fight to influence the influence of money in politics through ethnic and campaign finance reform. So Jason, it's truly an honor and a pleasure to have you among us. So thank you so much for everything you do. We want to give you a warm welcome and give you the platform so you can talk to members of the African Leadership Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Papa, for that wonderful introduction. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Papa. You are a dear friend and tremendous leader of the community. So I'm very honored to be joining you. Always happy to help you do the great work that you do through the African Leadership Group and giving back to the community and mentoring the youth and our businesses as well. So thanks for your continued friendship and leadership. And I heard you introduce Teo Okwande as well, who is also another longtime friend of mine. Teo and I actually went to law school together, and we were law school classmates and graduated in the same year. So also another fantastic community leader. So good to be on with you as well, Teo, and the others as well.
Thank you.
So I do want to take a few minutes and just give you all a sense for where we are right now as we battle the coronavirus, because we're in the very unusual position of having to deal with both a public health crisis, a crisis the likes of which we have not seen since 1918. 102 years have passed since we have had our last pandemic and crisis of this magnitude. And at the same time, we're dealing with an economic crisis, and a crisis the size of which we have not dealt with since the Great Depression in the 1930s. So it's been about 70 years since we've dealt with an economic crisis like this as well. And we've never been in a situation where, as a country, we've dealt with both of those at the same time, both an economic crisis and a health crisis that are tied together to one another. So this is a very complicated challenge. It's a very deep challenge, and we have to be very deliberate in the way that we address it. So first, what Congress has been doing, we have now passed 3 stimulus bills, and we did those in March. The first 2 stimulus bills, the laws that we got in, were focused on the health component. So getting billions of dollars for testing, for the creation of testing kits, for medical equipment, to spend billions of dollars for researchers and scientists to develop a vaccine, because the quicker we can develop a vaccine, the quicker we can get ourselves completely out of the health crisis that coronavirus is presenting to the entire community. Those were the first 2 bills. The last bill, the third one, which we passed in late March, is called the CARES Act. You may have heard of the CARES Act. It has several kind of critical components to it. The first thing that it did was it vastly expanded the unemployment insurance program in the country. And it did that in a couple of ways. It first expanded who is eligible to receive unemployment insurance benefits, to include gig workers and self-employed workers, people who weren't previously covered by unemployment. So the eligibility was expanded. The second thing it did was that it expanded the amount of money that people get. So they could get up to an additional $600 a week. So that's about $2,400 a month in addition to the regular benefit. And then it also expanded the amount of time that they would get that extra money to 13 weeks, an additional 4 months of coverage. So that was the unemployment component. The next thing it did was it created the direct cash payment, so that those with Social Security numbers who have filed taxes, and even those who haven't, are eligible for up to $1,200 per adult and $500 per child of a direct cash payment that isn't taxed, that you don't have to pay back. That's just money that you can use to support your family, pay rent and mortgage, buy food, and pay your bills. And many Americans have already received that payment, and more are receiving it every week. That's the second thing that it did. The third thing is it spent a lot of money to create emergency loan and grant programs for businesses. The Payroll Protection Program, known as the PPP, it created that program with $349 billion to support it. And it created another one, or it expanded another one called Emergency Disaster Loans, billions of dollars in additional loans for businesses. Now, the PPP was so popular that the $349 billion was spent in less than 2 weeks. So it was a very popular program, but the reason for that is because the need is so great. The economic crisis in our community right now is so high, and so many businesses are struggling, closing their doors and laying off employees, that the need was so great we went through that money in less than 2 weeks. So what we're trying to do right now is pass a fourth law in the next week that will provide hundreds of billions of additional dollars for that PPP program, so that businesses can get forgivable loans, because if you comply with the terms of the loan, it's actually forgiven, and you don't have to pay it back. And that's a very important element of this. So we're trying to do that, and we're also trying to get more money for our hospitals and for our local cities and communities who are struggling to keep basic services and to keep people healthy. So those are the things that we're doing right now to try to address this crisis. And I continue to work really closely with the mayors and the county commissioners and Governor Polis and the other members of the congressional delegation to get additional testing equipment, to get PPE, personal protective equipment, to get money to our small businesses, to expand the unemployment coverage and deal with so many other elements of this crisis. So that is what we are focused on primarily right now, trying to find a way to deal with both the health health component and the economic component. Now, one other comment I'll make, and that is the challenge of staying home in these lockdown orders. Now, not everybody can stay home. We know that. People have to work. People are in essential and critical jobs. You have to get out and do grocery shopping, things like that. So stay home if you can. Many people can't for a variety of reasons, and they have to wear masks and wash their hands and wear gloves and do other things. Now, it's frustrating. It's very frustrating having to do this because we've been in lockdown for about a month now. But what I can say is it's important that we not lift these lockdown orders too soon, because what we absolutely know from countries that have lifted them too soon, from what happened in 1918 during the Spanish pandemic, where they lifted it too soon, is that a second wave would then come and hit our community and hit people who are vulnerable and hit our mothers and fathers and our senior citizens. And the second wave would be much more severe if we do this too soon. So we have to make sure that we're lifting it as soon as we can, but we don't do it too soon that we create major problems for people that are vulnerable. Then one other comment is the nature of the coronavirus. Many people that have it never show any symptoms. So even if you feel like you're fine and not sick, you might be carrying the coronavirus, and you could pass it on to someone who's vulnerable, right? We know that our senior citizens, so your mothers and fathers, your grandmas and grandpas, people who are sick or have pre-existing conditions are very vulnerable to this disease. And for their safety, we have to make sure that we're following these guidelines. So those are the things that we're working on now, and would love to open it up for a discussion, Papa, and take questions and have more of a conversation with everybody.
Thank you so much, Congressman. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to have you. And if you have a question for the Congressman, feel free to submit it via chat so we can read the question. So Congressman, and I know I've been receiving a lot of questions regarding the SBA. A lot of people did submit their application where they were approved, and some did get an email telling them that they run out of money. Could you talk about that situation, if that's the case, and what is the next process? Because most of these businesses have a lot of questions regarding that.
Yes, Papa, that is true, that both the Emergency Disaster Loan Program and the Payroll Protection Program have run out of money. Now, if you have submitted an application and you're in the system, then then when we allocate additional money to the program, you will still get it. You don't have to apply again. You don't have to get in line again. You will remain in line. You will remain in the position that you were in when you submitted your application. And then when we can get more money into that program, which I'm really hoping will happen this week, then we will start the program up again, and the money will start flowing out to those who have applied. And in addition to that, if you think you might need that money, you can still apply. You can still get your application and get the process going and get in line so that when there's additional money, again, you will get that and it will get going again. So that's really important to know. You don't have to reapply. Now, if you think that there's a problem with your loan, or if you're not getting information back, one thing you can do is you can contact our office. So we have an entire staff that works on helping people with benefits, helping people navigate government agencies, helping you get connected with the right people in the Small Business Administration so we can help answer your questions. We have a resource guide on our website. You can go to my website at crow.house.gov. We have a coronavirus resource guide on there that talks about the health issues, the benefits, the small business resources. So you can go there to get information, or you can just call us directly to get connected with our staff. And if we can't answer your question, we'll get you connected with somebody who can.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I have another question here. How is the next stimulus package looks compared to the last three that have been approved? Is there a specific area this fourth round will be funding?
Yes, so the next stimulus package, which again, I'm pushing really hard for us to pass it this week, is going to be focused on two main areas. It's going to be focused on the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, and the disaster loans. And I've asked for $250 billion for the PPP. And then it's going to be focused on getting money for hospitals and health clinics, and also hopefully municipalities. We want to get money to our cities so that fire services and police and garbage disposal and all the essential services that our city provides that they're running out of money to do, we'll have the money to do that. But also to our hospitals and health clinics so they can keep people healthy and keep staff on their payroll and buy the equipment that they need. So those are the areas that we're focusing on the next week. And then going forward beyond that, a stimulus 5, probably next month, will focus a little bit more on infrastructure. So making sure that we do things like broadband and internet service, because one of the things we've realized here is when people are working from home and when they can't go into the doctor's office and they can't go into school, and when they're doing remote learning or distance learning, they need access to broadband services to do that, to do your school work from home, to do your remote learning, to do your doctor's visits from your living room. And not everybody has that broadband. So we're going to focus on that too.
Thank you. So I have another question regarding all the protests of staying home we've been seeing. So what are your thoughts on those, and how do we handle those who refuse to prescribe to social distancing?
Yeah, the protests are irresponsible. There's just no doubt about that. People that are coming out and congregating in large groups and putting themselves at risk but they're also putting others at risk. You know, here's the deal with this virus. We're in this together. We will either deal with this successfully or we will fail together as a community. And if one person doesn't pull their weight, and if one person doesn't follow the guidelines and do what they're, what the doctors and the nurses and the scientists are telling us what we need to do to fight this disease, then they put other people at risk, not just themselves. And the other thing they do is the more this disease spreads, the more burden there is on our doctors and nurses. And they are working 24/7. They're working 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, in many cases. They are putting themselves on the line and their health on the line to keep us safe. And we owe it to them. We owe it to those frontline health workers to do everything that's possible in our control to stop the spread of this disease, to give them some relief so that we can fight this together. And if people are ignoring those guidelines and ignoring what needs to be done, what we all need to do, then they're putting other people at risk, and they need to stop. Now, I know this is tough. This is tough on everybody. It's tough not being able to go out. It's tough not being able to shake hands and hug your loved ones and your friends. I mean, you all know me. I love hugging. I love shaking hands, and it's very hard for me not to be able to do that. And it's difficult having our kids home all the time and having to do school for our kids while we work. But this is the price of us having to do this together and figure out the way forward.
Thank you. Another question in regard to testing. Any update on testing? What are the plans to continue to expand testing?
Yeah, so the key to normalizing, the key to lifting these lockdown stay-at-home orders is testing. That is the single most important thing. If we have enough tests and if we can do testing and see who has the disease, and then we do what's called surveillance and contact tracing. So what that means is you test somebody that exhibits symptoms, and if they test positive, then you have people, health professionals, public health professionals, who will go and figure out everybody that person has been in contact with, and then you test those people. And then you have those people quarantined. If we're able to do that, then if we have good testing and surveillance and contact tracing, then we can start normalizing things and lifting these orders. And that will buy us some time until we develop a vaccine so we can vaccinate everybody and beat this thing for good. But testing is key. So what we've done is we've allocated billions of dollars for additional test kits to produce them. But what the president really needs to do, and we continue to push him to do this, and he hasn't done it, is he needs to use a law called the Defense Production Act. So since 1950, there's a law on the books called the Defense Production Act that allows the president to use that power to force the production and the purchase of test kits and personal protective equipment, PPE, to get it to where we need it. And he hasn't done that yet. So we're pushing him very hard to try to do that. Because if we had done that 2 months ago, we would be in a very different position right now. We're wasting time. So it needs to happen, and it needs to happen soon.
Thank you. I'll take a couple of more questions here. We understand that a big infrastructure bill is highly likely to pass, which will create jobs. We will likely bring certain aspects of advanced manufacturing back to the US from overseas so we can control our critical supply chain. This will create jobs. So 2 questions. What can be done to ensure community of color have access to this job? And what will be done regarding education and training program to build a pipeline of talent in this field of work?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that we have to understand is that communities of color have been disproportionately impacted by this disease. So we're trying to gather the numbers now, but many more are getting sick, many more are dying within communities of color than not. And we have to address that. And it has to do with the access to medical care, the access to quality, affordable health insurance, and many other issues that are systematic that we have to address. So I'm committed to doing that. And I've actually signed on to an effort to get the data that we need to see why these disparities are happening and how we can make good public policy to help fix them. But we do know that our healthcare system is broken. We don't need data to tell us that, because we already have that data. We already know that that it's too expensive, it's not affordable, and people don't have access to it, and we need to fix it. And I've been fighting for a long time to provide a universal healthcare system based on a federal public option to fix that. So that's number one. Number two is I've also signed on to an effort that for this next stimulus package, the next tranche of money for the payroll protection program, that we prioritize disadvantaged communities, communities of color, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and others that have a harder time getting that capital and that money than other folks. So they should go to the front of the line because it's much harder for them to access some of this money. And I think that's fair, that's equitable. And many of these small community businesses are our most vulnerable businesses. Unlike the big chains and the big companies that can weather this storm, smaller independent businesses cannot. So we have to make sure we're prioritizing those. And then the last part is on the advanced manufacturing. Absolutely right. I think one of the things that this has shown is that it's important that we have critical needs met internally, that we have a manufacturing base that can, within the United States, that can do test kits, that can do personal protective equipment, can do these other vital, essential things that are important for our national security, for our national health, and that we're not relying on other countries to provide that. Because in the instance of a pandemic, every country is going to put their priorities first, as they should. They're going to keep things that they're manufacturing, and we can't be relying on others. So we need to have it. So what we need to do, and I sit on the Small Business Committee, and I'm also the chairman of the Innovation and Workforce Development Subcommittee. And we've been passing many bills, and we have more bills that are designed around small and medium-sized business manufacturing, developing a talent pool, developing advanced manufacturing businesses in America, and lowering the barriers for the creation of those businesses and the expansion of those businesses. And I'm going to continue to do that work.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I'll take one last question, and I want to let everybody know also we'll compile the question. If your question was not answered, we'll send it to the Congressman's office, and we'll be sharing also the information on how to get a hold of the Congressman's office. The last question is, as of yesterday at 4 p.m., Colorado had 9,047 cases and 391 deaths. Do you have any idea about the projection highest number for Colorado?
You know, I'm not going to opine on the high numbers, or a number, right? Because that model, the predictions are based on models, and the models change every day. So what we do know is that the numbers haven't reached their peak yet. That we haven't peaked because the numbers continue to increase, both the number of people getting the disease and the number of people dying from the disease. So we haven't peaked yet. That number is going to go up. It's going to be much higher than it is right now. I can't say, and I don't think anyone can say what that peak and what that overall number is going to be. But what we also know is that the stay-at-home orders, the lockdown orders are working because the rate of increase in the cases is going down, right? So even though the cases are going up, the rate of increase is flattening and going down, which means that it's spreading less and less fast. So our social distancing is working, and we're slowing this thing down. But if we lift the social distancing and stop doing what we're doing right now, what we also know is that it will go back up immediately and very quickly. So that's what we know about the cases. And the other thing we know about the data and those 391 deaths, and there will be more today and more tomorrow and more next week, because again, it continues to go up, is that our senior citizens, our retirees and those who are sick are much more vulnerable, and a very large number of those fatalities come from those folks. So it's really important that we're protecting our parents and our grandparents by doing everything we can.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And I just want to give you the floor at this time to give a last word remark to the African leadership community and to the community at large.
Thank you, Papa. Thank you again for your leadership and for assembling this forum. You do such important work for the community, and I appreciate everything that you do. I'll just end by saying two things. Number one, we are here to help you. I have an entire office in Aurora and in Washington, D.C. We have phone numbers, emails, a website. We are here to help you work through these programs, to help you find resources to meet your needs. And if you're frustrated, if you're not getting the information that you need, come and talk to us and we will try to help you. Number two is we are all in this together. We are one community. We will either succeed or fail in addressing this crisis as a team. So now is the time for us to come together and to make, the individual sacrifices that we need to make to help our country and our community and everybody here. And I know it's hard, but I really appreciate everyone's efforts on this. And there will be a time, we will get through this, whether it's this summer or this fall, we will see each other again. We will be able to embrace each other again. But that time is not now, and we have to do what's necessary to get through it. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Congressman. It's truly a pleasure. You are a friend of the community, a friend to the African Leadership Group. We really want to thank you for your time, and go represent Colorado, best what you do at Congress, and we're very lucky to have you among us. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Papa. You all take care and be safe and healthy out there, everybody.
Will do. Thank you so much, Congressman. All right, so we will get going to the program. And again, I just want to emphasize and clarify the fact that if your question was not answered, Lori is compiling all the questions and we will get it to the Congressman's office. And again, if you did not RSVP, it means we don't have your email to send you the presentation package. So you have the link, please go and RSVP. That will allow us to have your email address so we can share all this information via email with you. So your question will get to the Congressman's office and we'll make sure they get back to you. We'll also give you their phone number to reach out if you have any question or any concern. But please make sure to go online and RSVP through the link so the African Leadership Group can have your contact information. All right, we will. I just want to send a reminder to everybody. You are all muted, so we cannot hear you as we go through this presentation. We just want to make sure there's no distraction. So if you have any question, so feel free to chat it, and that's the same format we're going to use. So after each presenter, they will have a minute to take a couple of questions. So feel free to chat your question as we go along with the presentation. So Amadou will compile it and let me know, and we'll read your question out loud. So at this point, I would like to bring Jamal, and I've read his bio early on. So Jamal is part of the African Leadership Group Business Committee, doing an outstanding job. But Jamal will talk to you about what are the things that you need to do and need to know in this current environment for your business. Jamal, thank you again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Papa. Thank you all for joining. Definitely this time now is the biggest thing is having a backup plan. That's the biggest thing that we must have, not only during this time, but any situation that may arise. And so let's go on next. And so I'm just gonna provide a couple opportunities, a couple things that you all should be doing. If you're not, is definitely apply for different grants and so on. Grants are probably the biggest thing. Grants, you don't really have to pay those back. So I really recommend that you go after a grant. If not, there's definitely loans available and so on. So next. So the biggest thing I want to encourage you all is pretty much is taking care of yourself. That's the most important thing, is your health, as well as being able to eat well, exercise, spend time with family, do things to get your mind going and keep yourself going. Listening to music, reading books, watching different movies and so on. Those are big things that I need you all to continue to do if you're not doing already. I know this is a trying time for us all. It's a testing time for us all, and we're all going through it. We're all facing it together, like Congressman Crow had just mentioned. And I feel that we are all here for each other, and we must be able to continue to grow with each other, but also continue to keep each other safe by following the regulations, staying at home, and so on. But also, what is your banks doing? What is different institutions doing and things like that? Are you doing research for yourself? Are you able to see what's going on in your community? Are you involved? And I believe those are the biggest things that we must be able to do and must be able to see and to continue forward. Also, having a financial plan. So the biggest thing is I'm a professor, and the biggest thing I teach my students is how to write a business plan, right? And so the biggest thing is, what is your financial plan? What are you doing to keep yourself above float? Or what are you doing to keep yourself, if a situation like this comes again, you are prepared and you're able to protect not only yourself, but able to protect your family? Are you putting money away? Are you saving? What are the type of steps or strategies that you're taking? And so the biggest thing I teach my students is, what problem are you trying to solve? So during this time, what is the problem solving issue or the thing that you want to problem to solve, or the solution you need to keep going forward? And so I want you all to continue to work on your solutions, continue to bring to light this situation, but make a positive out of this situation. We have to be able to make a positive out of this situation and what's going on. Next, please. So I want to talk about finding opportunities. So like I mentioned before, definitely apply for different grants, different loans, different things that are starting to arise. But with finding opportunities, what are you doing with your business? Those who own businesses, what are you doing? Are you using, the online services or going remotely to help build your business? Are you consulting online now? What are different methods that you're using at this time to help your business grow, but also expand it? The biggest thing is we're all online. Like you all know, my kids are online. I'm teaching from home now. And we look at different situations that not only our students are going through, but also what the community is going through. Not everyone can afford, internet, or not everyone can afford these different things to be able to get connected. So how are we finding ways and methods to connect our community? And so the biggest thing is online is an atmosphere. Social media is an outlet, different things like that. And why don't we use those outlets to grow? Use those outlets to build on what's going on today. And so I want you all to really see that even through this situation, we're still able to be connected to each other. We're still able to communicate with each other. We're still able to speak, see each other, and so on during this time, as well as build partnerships. The biggest thing is you are able to build partnerships through Zoom, through WebEx, through different outlets. Are you able to build those partnerships? Are you able to reach out to others? And I thank Papa and the rest of my business committee on the opportunity that we're providing for not only ourselves, but we're providing for our community, because we see there's a need. And so I want you all to see that you are all problem solvers and we all can get through this. But not only that, but we all have the mindset to make sure that we create something in our community that can last longer than our situation or longer than what we're going through. And so I want you all to see that. Next slide, please. So I did provide more opportunities. I know that Papa will share these different opportunities with you all, these different outlets for you all to use, apply for. If you can, apply for them all. I'd rather you apply for them all and just keep applying, because out of so many no's, there may be a yes. Just with business, there's tons of no's, but you have to keep pushing forward. You have to take the risk to make sure that this happens. So I encourage you all to just keep it going. Also, this will pass. We've all faced different things in our lives. Like Papa mentioned before, my parents are from Monrovia, Liberia, West Africa. I consider myself Liberian, even though I was born here in the States. But my parents faced so much adversity. In Liberia, they had different things going on, the Civil War and so on. And my parents encouraged me and told me that, hey, things happen in life, but it shows how strong you are as a person, as a community. And so I just ask you all to continue that on, continue to be strong during this time, continue to educate others, continue to connect with each other, and continue to be the best that you can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamal. Very, very important point. And if you have any question for Jamal, feel free to put it on the chat, and Amadou will let me know. And I have a question for you, Jamal. Now, in this current environment, if people are interested in getting more information, because people might be hesitant to start a business, or they're not opening their business. So, and if they want to have more resources, more information, what platform can you share with them, at least to have access to the resources or people they can talk to?
At the Community College of Denver, we have a business team. So if you all email me or call me, I can connect you with our business team. But our business team has been working on a lot of funding opportunities, not only funding opportunities, but also opportunities for food, for housing, and different things like that. How can we cater to the community as well as our student population? And so if you reach out to me, I can get you connected in that way through maybe have a conversation with myself one-on-one, or I can direct you to a team member of mine from the college, and we can work together from there.
So excellent. So I just got another question from David, and this is more like toward all of us as community members to think about it, because he has a very, very important question. His question is, what will we do for our people who are disabled in the community that need help? So because they're going through a lot. So I don't know if Jamal, you want to say something, but we have a lot of community members that are disabled, and what can we do as a community as a whole to help them?
Oh, yes, definitely. That's an issue that we're dealing with around the world, around the clock. Definitely, it's how are we getting resources to them? How are we helping them? It's the biggest thing, but also we need professionals to be able to also reach out to them, just like what's going on here, but also getting them connected, seeing what they need, reaching out to them, seeing if they need internet access or they need some type of help or an assistance, because we can't forget about no one. Everybody's important, everyone is needed. And so we have to continue our resources on reaching out to those communities, as well as being able to say, hey, we're here to help you, but also keeping it in a safe way that they're able to get that necessary resources they need as well.
Thank you so much, Jamal. I wish we could unmute everybody so everybody can clap for your presentation, but well done and thank you. But I also want to let everybody know that we have Lee, and Lee Toko is with TBK Bank, and Lee is part of the business committee as well. So Lee, we want to thank you for your support, and thank you also for your involvement. And also I want to say hello to our members that are all the way from Africa. I know we have people from Mali. So Sheikh, thank you for joining us. I know we have people from Senegal, Ibu, Tito, and everybody from Senegal. We say Jarama, Nangadev. So I also know that I have my brother from Italy joining us. So thank you, Brother Elijah. Thank you for joining. And I know I have my people from DC, my sister. So just to let you know that the African Leadership Group has expanded beyond our border of Colorado. And it's truly an honor to have you join us this morning. And please, any question, feel free to reach out. So thank you so much, Jamal. And we're going to transition to Rosie. And I've read her bio early on. And as you can see, it's a book. And she did want to make sure that we don't read the entire book. But what I can say about Rosie, she works with the state and a friend. And I hope you have a pen and a paper ready, because she have a lot of valuable information for us this morning. So Rosie, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Papa. And thank you so much for the African Leadership Group team. You guys are always on top of the game and so professional. And we appreciate everything that you do within your communities. And the only thing I want to say is, we are located at the Office of Economic Development and International Trade for the state of Colorado. We are called the Minority Business Office, and we are here to help in anything we can. And what we've done in the last few weeks here is we have allocated all of our efforts to gather information and resources for small businesses that are in need. So on the slide right there, you can see the team, myself, Ulysses, and Soraya Bromer, who is here in our webinar attending, are available for you to give us a call. The phone numbers that appear right there on the screen are for everybody to see. Everybody can send us an email, call us, and make sure that we connect you with the right resources. Down below, we have Talia Bond and Mark Gittes. Those are the two consultants that we have allocated specifically for SBA and any other loan or grant resources. So these two people have gone through the EIDL, the PPP loans for themselves and their companies. But not only that, but they have helped hundreds of people go through that process, make sure that they gather the right information. And so these two are the consultants that we will be connecting you. If you need a little bit more assistance, more hand holding, we are happy to provide as many hours as you need to help you really complete everything. Day-to-day certifications and contracting are also still available through the last 3 consultants that I'm listing right there. But more importantly, right now, I just wanted to also give you three different tips that we have been using that kind of further more the information Jamal went through. One of the things that we are our characteristic as immigrants is that we don't necessarily like to ask for help. And we don't necessarily like to say, you know what, I'm in trouble financially and I really don't know what to do. And my only advice to you is that don't be shy. Contact your banks, your providers, your vendors, contact your lenders, contact everybody that you have a payment out for, and ask for a grace period. You're not alone. Everybody's going through the same trouble. Please feel free to do that. And if you contact one and they say, no, we can't do anything, call back again the next day, because you may get a different representative with a different perspective, or something may have changed. So don't be shy about that. The other thing is contact your current clients, contact the people that you're doing business, and try to see how you can increase the level of sales that you have with those people. They already know you. They know what type of business you are. They know what capacity you have. They know how responsive you are. They like doing business with you. So take advantage of that. And you already have a relationship established with them. So just further that relationship and make sure that you take advantage of that and continue your sales, continue your services that you're providing to them. So we have several examples, but I don't have time to go through them, but I can explain later on. If you give me a call, I can give you some schemes that we've seen in the communities, in the different businesses that have been working. Also, you have to be careful with fraud. There's a lot of people out there posting like they are calling from the IRS, they are after your check, the money that you will get. So it's not good that you are given any information over the phone. The IRS is never going to ask for any information over the phone. So make sure that you don't provide any of that information for your business or personally over the phone. And the last thing that I wanted to tell you here is that the Paycheck Protection Loan, the PPP that we call, and the EIDL ran out of funds, but the SBA is still doing the SBA Express Bridge Loan, and I think we have a banker on this webinar that may further the information on that. And then also there's the SBA debt relief. If you have a 504 loan or a 7A loan, the SBA is providing all sorts of deferments for payments, and just make sure that you call your bank and make sure you ask for that. And Lori, if you don't mind just going back a little bit to the last slide here, these resources that we have on the right-hand side it's a great lending resource that I'm going to go over very, very quickly right now. I also put in there the COVID Small Business Navigator hotline. We have about 15 people taking calls every day, Monday through Friday, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We have various languages available for resources. So please give us a call. Let us know. how we can help you. We can connect you with the SBDC locally, the Small Business Development Center network locally. We have 15 centers throughout the state. So give us a call, let us know how we can help you. And then the last point right there is that we have a variety of webinars and YouTube lessons that you can, we have YouTube lessons for how to process unemployment. We have a variety of different things that can be available for you. And then we can go to the next slide, and then the next slide. So this is the resource, and very quickly, Lori is gonna walk us through these slides, but this is the best resource that you can go through right now. This is a public Google sheet that talks to you about grants, that talks to you about how banks are providing deferrals, then loans. And the loans that we have listed here are basically loans that are provided by municipalities or micro lenders or different things like that. We have information that we have gathered from different banks, different micro lenders, different municipal emergency relief funds that have been set up. And I think Jamal mentioned the one from the city of Aurora, which is fantastic. But there's people that live in other areas. This is for the entire state. And my suggestion is that you go over every single one of these resources. Some of them are for agriculture, some of them are for arts, hospitality, different industries. So make sure that you go over this slide, this Google sheet, very, very detailed. It's 167 different funding resources. And as you can see right there, and Lori, you can just go over to the last one. As you can see right there, every single one of them has a link to this organization who is providing, the funds. They all have different requirements. I'm not going to go over that, but some of them may ask that you have been in business for 1 year. Some of them may have asked that you should, we don't really care. Even if you were like in the midst of opening your business, we'll help you, things like that. We have heard of different businesses that we're going to be open in April or middle of March, and boom, the order got here. They were not able to open, but guess what? They already spent all of the money in that operation in setting up the lease agreement, setting up the equipment and things like that. So there's many, many different cases. And Lori, we can just go to the last one. And that's all my presentation. Just be aware of some fraud schemes. Also, there's a lot of phishing, like phishing. I have a hard time pronouncing that word, but in computers, make sure you know where your kids are, what websites they get on, because that's part of how people are infiltrating your systems. And just be aware of the IRS. The IRS is never going to approach you over the phone. They always send you a letter. So make sure you also ask for help. Don't be shy. So that's the end of what I have to say. Thank you, Papa, for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much, Rosie. Thank you. And once again, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't had a chance to RSVP for us to have your email address, please do so, because we can share all this information for you. So Rosie, I have a quick question for you. I had a chance to visit your office a few times. I'm fully aware of all the things that you offer. Could you just touch overall? I know we are in this current situation, but we hope that we're going to get over with. Could you just give an overview, the service that your office offer and how the community can engage with you going forward?
Absolutely, Papa, and that's a great point. So we are part of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, OEDIT, what we call, but we are one of the 9 divisions there. And so we have business funding and incentives. We have the Colorado Tourism Office. We have the Colorado Outdoor Industries. We have the Film Office. We also have the Creative Industry Office. So we have a variety of different divisions that serve Colorado as a whole. And just like you said, Papa, the important part is that you can go to the website. It's called choosecolorado.com, and you can see what are the other resources that some of the other divisions are doing, to help businesses, small businesses. That's our main mission in Colorado, to basically assist all businesses in Colorado grow, prosper, find opportunities, and things like that. So as part of that, I can assure you that Business Funding and Incentives is doing a huge effort in that. Colorado Tourism Office is also doing a lot of work there, and Colorado Creative Industries. The Film Office and the Communication Office is basically helping us disseminate all of the information throughout the state, because we have to think about every corner of our state and the rural communities, how hard they have been hitting. Just today, we got a report on unemployment and the different things financially and economically, how they are affecting our state. So I didn't have a chance to put together that information for you, but I'm going to send out kind of like a summary of what we found on the numbers and things like that.
So thank you, Rosie. Also, could you also clarify for members of the community to engage with your office? Is it a cost or is it yes, if you could touch on that a little bit.
Absolutely. All of the consulting services and everything that we do for you is part of your taxes working for you. We don't charge any money. We can provide businesses with consulting hours, with specific consulting expertise, and you don't have to pay anything for this. This is part of what the state of Colorado is doing for you, for the people that live in and work here in the state. So definitely no cost. Everything is, the cost for the consultants is basically paid from our offices. So it's not a service that is free. It's just a service free for the client, for you, but not necessarily, it's not necessarily a free service. That what that means, or what I meant to say with that, is that is quality people that we're putting in front of you, consultants that have deep expertise in their own areas. So we're not just putting any person that we recruit from the state, from the street. We have professionals that have years and years and years of experience, and that are also entrepreneurs. So they do have that perspective.
Yeah, and we have one question coming in. Somebody is asking if this program is just for Colorado, or is it nationwide? Meaning, in other states, do they have similar programs?
They have similar programs in other states, absolutely. The Small Business Development Center network is nationwide. I think we are in every state of the nation, and we have also offices internationally. I know they have a lot in the Latin countries. I'm not exactly sure if they have any presence in the continent of Africa, but we do have different offices in different parts of the country, the world as well.
Thank you so much. And this is what I would like to share with community members. I know most of us, we are very entrepreneurship oriented, and most of the time we don't have access to some of the contract or some of the resources. So I highly encourage all of you to engage with Rosie's office, because if you're looking to have a contract from the state in all aspects of business, it could be on construction, it could be on culinary, it could be on anything, that would be the place to start with. So we can no longer sit here and complain to say we don't have access to the resources. We have a department that's highly focusing on helping immigrants. So please, 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 I highly encourage all of you, even if that's a business idea, just engage with them. You will be surprised and amazed the opportunity that's out there. So Rosie, we want to thank you. We are very, very lucky to have you part of the family and the committee. So thank you so much for your presentation, and well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. So, now I want to give a shout out to the public speaking class section 7. I know we have Professor Majama online, and I also know that there are some students. So if you haven't checked out the public speaking class, I highly recommend that you should do that. It's an amazing program that they're doing online. So Professor Majama, Thank you so much for your service. We are blessed to have you among us as well. All right, so this is a time where we're going to bring Solomon Mwanga. I read his bio earlier, but what I can say about him, as I mentioned, he's a mentor of mine while I was in the banking. He have a deep heart for the community, and I tease him because he's a banker here. So you guys can get ready, just open your wallet to know he's going to fill it up with money. So Solomon, the floor is yours. Solomon, we cannot hear you.
You have to unmute him.
Thank you. I could not unmute myself. The host muted me. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, African Leadership Group. Thank you, Papa, for this opportunity to serve the community. And like Papa mentioned, currently I'm a banker. I'm a career banker. I've been doing this for a little over 20 years, and I'm also the chair of the Economic Opportunity Economic. Ask me to serve, and of course, when Papa makes a call, you show up. So specifically within the CARES Act, the Payment Protection Program, and I don't know if you can hear me. I'm having a little bit of unstable internet connection, so if something is not right, just let me know.
We can hear you, Solomon.
Okay, good. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit more in detail. I'm going to do a quick overview of the program. I know Congressman Jason Crow talked about it, Rosie talked about it in very broad terms. I want to talk about it from a lender's perspective, so hopefully shed some light from a lender's perspective on what that means and how to go about it. So I'm using a slide. Some of the information is a little dated. The introduction information, as everybody heard, this program actually ran out of money as of Thursday at 9 a.m. in the morning. But don't panic. The Congress and Senate are under discussions right now to extend another second tranche. I think it's going to be about $250 billion towards this same payment protection program in particular, in addition to other things that they talked about. But particularly for this program, it's going to be, they're talking about funding it again for another $250 billion. So some of the businesses that missed opportunity will have an opportunity to apply and qualify. So the key is to be ready. And that's the reason why I'm going to go over this right now, so you have a pretty clear understanding of what that means. And how to go about it and how you can be eligible for it. So, so I'm not going to talk about the $350 billion. They already talked about it. Let me just jump right into the upper right corner of this slide that's up on your screens if you have video access. It's talking about who's eligible. So generally speaking, I'll just go over this. I'm assuming a lot of people know a lot about it, but I'll just briefly go over these. Eligibility is determined. Any small business that's fewer than 500 employees. If you're 501c3 nonprofit organization with fewer than 500 employees, if you're an individual who operates as a sole proprietor, independent contractor, 1099, and then a couple other things, you know, tribal business concerns and all that, and you meet the SBSI standards. So you're eligible for that. You know, there's some special rules if you're in the food and accommodation food service, or if you're operating a franchise, they do it by location. So there's on the application that we're going to cover later, they talk a little bit about that. They ask you if you're franchised and if you're registered. So just remember that the 500 employee threshold includes employees full-time, part-time, in any other status. However, if your business who uses a lot of independent contractors like 1099s, those are not your employees and you cannot include them in the count. And that's a question that has come up before. So I'll jump into the second part of it. What will lenders be looking for? So basically what we've been doing, especially at Midwest One Bank, we're trying to make sure that we're following the rules and the guidelines of the PPP program as provided by the SBA. Congress and the Senate passed the law. Then the SBA, federal government agency, had to come up with an operating document to give us guidelines on how we can qualify borrowers. So what we were looking for was to get some kind of information on your payroll to make sure that that you calculated the loan amount you qualify for correctly. So we're requiring us, one, an application to be submitted. Okay, that was an application that the SBA actually came up with. Two, we also required supporting documents. And a lot of times, if you use a third-party payroll provider, they will be able to generate these reports that showed what your 12-month gross payroll was, what the payroll costs are, and we're going to talk about that in the next slide. So we'll be looking for that documentation, a worksheet, or some kind of report from, say, ADP or any other third-party payroll provider that showed us what you paid for as far as the gross costs in payroll for a whole year. And I'll talk about a little bit more in detail what payroll costs mean. So, generally that's what we're looking for: supporting documentation and an application. Most banks set up a process, and they had to build this process very quickly. There's a lot of misunderstanding from applicants what this means. They were thinking that SBA is providing the money. What the SBA is providing, and when they say they're running out of money, is a guarantee. The money that's being lent out is actually bank money, so the banks are on the hook. So they're tasked with really documenting these applications correctly, because in the end, when this loan is either forgiven or a business goes insolvent, they have to go back to the federal government and collect their guarantee. So that's what the federal government provided, that the $350 billion is just a guarantee to repay the banks in case A, the business seeks for forgiveness and that turns into a grant, or B, the business is insolvent and cannot pay the money back. The banks will get their money back from the federal government. So what banks do is they take the applications, input them in their system, then apply for what they call a PLP number, which is what secures the guarantee for the banks. Lori, if you could move on to the next slide. So a lot of businesses say, how much can I borrow? I touched on this a little bit briefly. Basically, the guidelines said that loans will be up to 2.5 the borrower's average monthly payroll costs, up to $10 million. So the payroll costs were basically, you take the sum of your total payroll costs, which will be the gross salaries or wages that you pay your workers. You add in any health benefits, 401k, overtime, all those are qualified payroll costs, and any local taxes, which is basically state or municipality taxes. But you have to exclude any federal taxes, i.e., you have to subtract out any taxes you pay for Medicare, Social Security, FICA, FUTA, and all those. Any taxes that you pay to the federal government were excluded, and that's your total payroll cost. So you take that for the year, and then the last thing, if you have any employees that make over $100,000, you had to cap the maximum you count to 100,000. You're not excluding those employees, but you're not, if you're paying any employee over, including if you're the owner of the business and you pay yourself a salary and you're over 100,000, say you pay yourself $120,000, the $20,000 over 100,000 cannot be included in that total cost. A little confusing, but it's important to know. And then the lenders were requiring that you make a statement that you excluded that money, or your payroll provider excluded any amount of money over the 100,000. So that was just a little bit of overview. For sole proprietors, it was a little different. The guidelines came out later. A lot of the people who missed out on the first tranche last week that were not funded, unfortunately, was sole proprietors, independent contractors, and other self-employed individuals. These are the people who need the money the most, but the guidelines were a little different because a lot of them were not using third-party payroll providers. They were actually using, the guidelines what you should use just Schedule C, whatever net profit that you report on the Schedule C, you have to take that and multiply it by 2.5. And so if you didn't report, and that was for 2019 Schedule C, which is part of your tax return. If you file a 1040 tax return, there's a Schedule C. If you're independent contractor or sole proprietor, if you reported a net profit, it was pretty simple. You take that and multiply it by 2.5, and that's the amount of money loan that you could be eligible for. So I've been talking about slide number 3 on the left. So moving on, so that's kind of how they calculate the loan amount. And then moving on, number 4, the biggest question. A lot of people are applying for these loans hoping that they'll turn into grants and they'll be forgiven. So basically what they're saying that if you use that loan that you qualified for through the bank and you get the money, what's next? After 8 weeks, that's 2 months, you'll be able to come back and show, if you showed that you used 100% of those loan proceeds for payroll costs up to 75%, and then other 25% are qualified expenses, i.e. if you're paying rent or utilities, you're allowed, or if you have a mortgage on building, your business owns a building, you can add that into the cost. If you use that loan amount for those qualified costs, the payroll cost and those qualified expenses, you can actually apply to your lender for forgiveness, and the lender has 60 days to respond to that. So that deadline to do that after you get the loan is June 30th. So if there's any participants who already have the loans and have questions, there'll be a little bit more guidance on that. Laurie, if you want to move on to the next slide. So this is just an overview of the application. SBA came up with the application. You have to be careful. There's a lot of non-bank lenders out there that were sending out applications, and they were SBA applications. They were not the right application. The application you complete is a one-page application with other disclosures. It has to say on top, Paycheck Protection Program. And at the bottom, there's a date stamp that says SBA Form 2483, April 20, that's the year. If it doesn't have that date stamp, you probably submitted the wrong application, and that will actually also delay the process of getting your loan approved. And then last slide, please. Keep going, that's still the application. So what I did, I know a lot of you are going to ask, well, how can I apply if I didn't apply? My bank has not been answering my questions. So at Midwest One, what we did is we had to take care of our existing customers first for obvious reasons. We are really focused on customer service. A lot of banks did that, but there was some, we're relatively medium-sized community bank. I think in 5 days, we took over 2,000 applications from our existing customers. So our resources were really stretched thin. We're all working really long hours. So what we did is we helped some, we're getting a lot of questions and referrals from either my existing customers or from the community asking me, well, what other bank? I can't get any information from my bank. So this slide just compiled some resources, same as Rosie did. I mean, if your incumbent bank is not non-responsive, or they're caught up, their process is slow, and you really want to look at other options, this is a good resource. We listed some banks that we knew were taking non-customers of their bank, and then there are also other non-bank lenders. I know Lendio is taking a lot of loans, and I know other funding circles. I think one of them is actually, I don't even know if it's on here. One of them is a Colorado-based non-bank SBA lender. So there are other resources, and I also encourage you, I'm happy to take questions, to answer questions if you have specific situations, online and offline later on, but I just want to give an overview of this program and basically share some details, make sure everybody's ready. they should be approving this second tranche of money, which is about another probably 250 billion. So if you haven't applied yet, or you applied and you didn't get in, you have to be ready and have your ducks in a row, so to speak. So with that, I'll just kind of open it up for questions, Papa.
Yes, thank you so much, Solomon. And yes, we definitely have some questions came in, but I want to kick it off by asking this question. We know the first round of applicant, the bank was not communicating with Congress. There was a lot of communication, miscommunication, bank was not ready. So do you feel like for the second round or for the next time, do you feel like the banks are in sync with what's coming on from the Fed and Congress, that you will be ready for people seeking out to get for this loan?
Great question, Papa. So what happened is, so think about this. I'll use an analogy. It was like trying to build a plane and flying it while it's in the air at the same time. So Congress comes up with a law, they pass a law. The law, you have to remember, the law was communicated to the public that these funds are available. However, the federal government department, which is the SBA, that was supposed to administer this law, so turn it from a law and turn it into an operating instrument. They have to come up with their operating memorandum, which they did. It's called the final, it was a 20-page final guidance that they're supposed to provide the lenders. By the time it was communicated to the public that these funds have been passed and the applicants were calling their banks, the SBA had not developed this final guidance rule, which is basically how the lenders are going to be dispensing this money so that they can get their guarantee if they need to. That took a few days, and there was a massive amount of confusion during that communication period. And during this time where the smaller banks really excelled, they have organizations where they were having direct conversations with the SBA. Now, the larger banks have their own industry organization, and they were trying to have direct conversations with the different oversight bodies, so they were a little bit slower in response, so that created a lot of confusion. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these were technical questions. Actually, the reason I even talked about the first application, they had an application out on the SBA website that they were distributing to customers that was actually erroneous and didn't address a lot of the concerns the banks had because it was not safeguarding the bank's guarantees. And the banks pushed back, and this was clarified. So they issued a new application that was dated April. They had one that came out in March. So the good news is a lot of these wrinkles have been straightened out as far as the application process. A lot of banks, including the really large banks, have completely set up their internal processes to take applications. So for the second tranche, it should go a lot smoother. Obviously, because now banks have had 2-week experience with it, a lot of the questions have been answered. The only part that's not been fully addressed, which we have obviously another couple months, is the forgiveness part, because as soon as the businesses get the money, they'll be clamoring to find out how they can turn these loans into grants so they don't have to pay them back.
No, good. Thank you. So we have another question is, can PPP only be applied to direct hire, or can it be applied to new hire? If you have staff that does not want to return to work, can this payroll money go to the new employees? It's a tricky question.
No, so let me clarify. You can take the money and do whatever you want with it. Okay, that's not the intent. So, i.e., some businesses might decide to pay off some other debt. What that means to the business is they will not be able to seek loan forgiveness. The way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to apply to payroll costs at minimum up to 75%, but you can apply 100%, whether you hired new people or you rehired some employees that you were either were furloughed or laid off and you brought them back, so long as those costs are within the 8-week period, which starts from the day the loan is funded. Say you fund the loan today, you go to your bank, you sign loan documents, they put the deposit into your account. And the clock starts from today, and any payroll costs that you pay in that 8-week period, okay, the next 2 months, whether it's a new hire, existing hire, a rehire, do qualify for loan forgiveness when you come back to apply. I hope that answers your question, Papa.
Yeah, it does. So, and let me ask this last question. What percentage of applicants were able to access the first tranche of money?
What percentage of what?
Applicants. How many applicants, the percentage of applicants that did access the first round of money?
Do you want me to take an educated guess or just make up a number?
Well, I guess just, I mean, because we know that some people, a lot of people applied, not everybody got it. They just wanted to know the percentage of, so maybe it could be a guess, or if anybody else know the answer to that question with an exact number. So that
let me give you an educated guess, and I'll tell you where, I'll just kind of paraphrase on where I'm coming from.
Okay.
A lot of businesses that applied through smaller community banks, for example, I think 95% of our customers, especially if they're not sole proprietors, independent contractors, got their loan because we had a process, we were nimble, and we're very responsive. So here in Colorado, for example, my customer was 100%. I'll tell you, a larger bank, Wells Fargo, and this was internal what they told me, 0% of the applicants got funded. They ran out of money before they did that because their process was very slow. So, and Wells Fargo has a huge chunk. I know US Bank, another big bank, and other larger banks, key banks, were processing. If I'm to take an educated guess, depending on what I heard, I know Wells Fargo had about they told me they had about 500,000 applications, and they did not get any funded because they didn't have a process in place. So they're really counting on the next tranche of money, and now they're ready. So given the percentage of market they have, I know US Bank was doing okay, Key Bank was doing fine, other larger medium-sized banks. I will take a guess it's about 50% of the applicants who applied got the money. The other 50% didn't. So that's the reason why there's such a huge void. But again, that's a pure guess from what I observe in the market and what I've heard talking to other banks.
That's great. Thank you, Solomon. We have a few more questions, but I hope we would have time to go over every single one of them. But if you have not registered, please do so we can follow up with you. And some people are asking if they can get the presentation. If you register exactly, we can get it emailed to you. Please make sure you go back to the link and register so we can have your email and follow up with you. Solomon, we are blessed to have you. Thank you so much for your service. You know, it was such a valuable presentation because I know a lot of people are confused about the process. So thank you so much. And it was a great presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So now we're going to be bringing Tayo. And like I said, Tayo is an attorney. He's chairing the legal clinic committee. And obviously, there's a lot of questions legally that covered everything that we are going through right now. So Tayo, thank you so much. And the floor is yours.
Can you all hear me? Thank you, Papa.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, and I appreciate going in this presentation. I know that there's a lot that's been covered. As part of, you know, what Papa told about me, I also served as the hearing officer, as one of the hearing officers during the prior economic depression in 2010 at the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. So I'll be offering some advice on the unemployment aspect of the CARES Act, as Congressman Crow has mentioned a little bit earlier. My deal here is just to try and sort of summarize a little bit with respect to the legal aspects concerning employers, concerning businesses, and even some sole proprietors in this whole COVID-19 regulations. So if you can go to the next slide, Lori. There's, in addition to the CARES Act, which everybody's been talking about, and I think Rosie mentioned a little bit more about the economic injury disaster loans, which both funding for both of those have run out. There's also the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. I'll be talking a little bit more about that a little bit later on. Just what that does to employers, what are the benefits that it brings. I just want to touch a little bit quickly on the coronavirus, the CARES Act. It is open in terms of the loan aspect, as Mr. Solomon pointed out. Sole proprietors, independent contractors, self-employed individuals are eligible for the loans. Now, there's a difference, and I'll go over that in a second, between an employer claiming an independent contractor under the employee category. As an independent contractor, you are allowed to actually apply for this loan on your behalf. And we'll look into that. Also, one thing I wanted to point out is that there are some refundable payroll tax credits that are available under the CARES Act that businesses need to look into. With respect to the calculation, one thing that was the question that was brought up in terms of PPP going to new employees, my understanding is that the calculation, as Solomon correctly pointed out, is based on your average monthly payroll in 2019. There is also a requirement that you need to have the same number of employees, or I believe no less than 90% of the employees that you had as of January 2020 to be able to qualify for this forgiveness. Obviously, there's going to be some clarification coming down the pipeline, as Solomon alluded to. So nobody really knows at this point, but there's going to be more to come, and I'm sure we'll be staying on top of that. If you go on to the next slide, Roy. So first, I wanted to start just to give you an idea of what is an employee versus an independent contractor. A lot of people, at least from my experience that I deal with, sometimes get this wrong. Obviously, in Colorado and in most states, there's a presumption that the services that are rendered under an employer-employee relationship is, it constitutes as an employee, the businesses hire. That means that, if you hire somebody and there's no contract or anything else, there's a presumption that under Colorado law that individual is an employee. So issuing that individual a 1099 alone doesn't cut it. And the reason why these are important is that the state has to fund their insurance benefits, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, et cetera, that come with this benefit. Now, in order to overcome this presumption, the employer has to show two things. One is that there's no control and direction of the performance of the services that are rendered by this individual, and that individual is engaged in activity that is customarily engaged in by an independent trade, occupation, profession, or business related to that services that are being performed. Now, how do they do this? Generally, the employer has to have the worker sign an independent contractor agreement. And there's certain things that the law requires the employer to put in the independent contractor agreement to show that this individual is an independent contractor agreement. So, for example, the independent contractor agreement has to include provision that the company does not require the worker to work exclusively for this employer rather. It cannot establish certain standards, like hour standards, what time you have to show up to work. It generally doesn't pay a salary, and just has to have a contractual obligation written in that. Also, even though there's minimal training that may be required, there has to be some indication or provision in the independent contractor agreement that there isn't any training, and that the independent contractor worker is already, is responsible for continuing their training and education, so on and so forth. And again, those are just some of the examples of things that has to go into the independent contractor agreement to overcome the presumption that this employer, or that this employee rather, is an independent contractor as opposed to an employee. Now, obviously, a lot of companies, a lot of businesses get this wrong all the time, whether on purpose or accidentally. And where it comes into play is when there are audits by the Department of Labor, the State Department of Labor. And then when that goes to court, there's a factor, courts will assess the factors that I've sort of pointed out on a case-by-case basis to determine if this individual is really an employee versus an independent contractor. All right, next slide, Lori. Now, I want to talk about, obviously in this pandemic, there's been a lot of questions that I've also gotten from my clients about what constitutes a layoff, what's a furlough, would they qualify for unemployment, how do we go about doing that? And one thing is clear, that whether it's a furlough or an employee is being laid off, the fact remains that the employee is not getting paid by the employer. All right. Now, there are some specific differences between a layoff and a furlough, right? A layoff, as the chart shows there, is basically the employer, the employee is no longer on the payroll of the employer, okay? There's a distinct date of termination, and there's a lot of administrative work that is required with respect to a termination. There's a payout of final check that's required by the state. In some cases, the employer might offer to pay COBRA for a certain amount of time, but that's not guaranteed, and the employee still has to cover the his or her side of that COBRA payments. And the last thing I have on there, just to go over this, is that for layoffs, an employee can actually initiate a layoff in the sense that the actions that the employee takes could lead to a layoff. That's contrary to a furlough. The furlough, it's the employer that actually makes that decision. An employee can't decide to furlough himself or herself. All right. Now, the relationship still continues, and it's basically governed by what the contract, if you will, between the employer and the employee. So in other words, the employer might still be paying for health benefits while the employee is on furlough. There's no guarantee, but just depends on what's in the benefits plans document. Same goes for the 401k and other benefits. One thing that is clear with this COVID crisis is that obviously, you know, things are still changing. Employers that put employees on furloughs could potentially, even though it's temporary, it's meant to be temporary, it could last longer, and there's no guarantee necessarily of reemployment. So anyway, that's that. Let's move on to the next. I'm going to talk about the next slide real briefly. Basically, there are some alternatives to either laying off or actually furloughing. There's a program in Colorado called the Colorado Workshare Program, whereby instead of laying off, the employer reduces the hours of the employee, and that reduction may potentially qualify for unemployment benefits. Okay, and you can see on that slide, there's a range to the extent that the reduction has to be at least a 10% reduction in the hours worked, and the salary of the employee, but no more than 40% reduction in the hours worked, normal weekly hours worked by this employee, if you will. So you have all the information there. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but there's ways to qualify for the employer. Essentially, you know, some certain ways, and if you do qualify, you have to go through the Division of Labor and Employment to apply. The employee, there's benefits available to the employee if they fall within that circumstances. So I put an example there. One thing that you would know, generally in normal circumstances, if with this work-share reduction, the employer is normally charged back for the benefits that the unemployment division pays on behalf of this employee. Now, there is some federal funding available, I believe, that is going to reimburse the employer in the event that they do participate in this work share and are qualified for that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'm going to skip this one. There's obviously some advantages, disadvantages. And also, I want to touch a little bit briefly on this slide. I know I have a little limited time, but I wanted to sort of summarize for it. This FFCRA essentially allows for two things. One, it extends the FMLA program a little bit, and it applies to employers with under 500 employees. There are some businesses that if you have 50 employees or less, you can potentially opt out of this program because it is costly to employers, right? So what it does is it mandates that employers pay their employees up to 12 weeks of paid family leave for employees that are affected in one way or the other through this COVID crisis, whether they're caring for a minor child or the child is the school is closed and there's some changes that has to happen. That's the one that's available. And then also, if we go to the next slide, there is also the FFCRA also allows for employees to be paid up to 80 hours or 2 weeks of paid sick leave. And that is, as highlighted there, that is for full-time employees. There are some other programs under that qualify as an employee for benefits. If we go to the next slide, Lori, that's essentially the part-time employees are eligible for paid sick leave for the number of hours that they work on average. So there are some exceptions to that as well. I put the website on here that the Department of Labor has a lot of information about this as well. And you'll have my information. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to go through that. One thing I do want to point out, generally with all these federal programs, and as has been pointed out, that there are some fraud and there are things that go on, the federal government has empowered these different divisions to actually go after fraudulent activities very harshly. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. There are provisions to fraud that's being committed. Let's skip over the economic injury disaster loans. We talked about that. I think Rosie covered that in detail. The thing I want to point out, if we go to the CARES Act, this slide, and I'll wrap up here briefly. The unemployment aspect of the CARES Act. There are, as Congressman Crow pointed out, there are basically 4 unemployment expansions that have been allowed under this CARES Act. One is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, where it provides up to 39 weeks of benefits to individuals. That includes self-employed 1099 workers, as Mr. Crow pointed out, independent contractors, and then there's what they call the gig employees, which are the Uber, the Lyft drivers that really don't fall under a certain description under the employer-employee relationship. The second part of that is the expansion of the Pandemic Emergency Employment Compensation, which on top of the 39 weeks adds 13 weeks of unemployment for individuals that have exhausted their unemployment compensation benefits. A third aspect of the unemployment part of that is the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation Program, or the FPUC. And that's the one that a lot of people know about, which is the one that provides, on top of the regular unemployment payment, $600 per week for any individual that's eligible for unemployment benefits. And last but not least, we've also talked about that, is that program with what we call the work share program, or the short time compensation program, and we've already discussed that. So as long as employees demonstrate and certify that they are unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable for work because of this pandemic, from generally between January 27, 2020, they can qualify for this unemployment benefits. And with that, I have one more slide, but just basically there's other notables. You'll have that on there. There are some additional EEO laws that apply to employers, employees, in terms of how you can relate to your employees during this crisis. can you ask an employee, to take a test? Can you prevent an employee from coming to work if they're reported, that they're feeling some symptoms of COVID? So there's some EEO laws that cover that, and I've put on some, the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, covers all that, and their website is on there. So with that, I know that's a lot of information, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them either here or in private as time allows.
Thank you so much, Tayo. Yes, we definitely do have some questions. So the first one is in the individual relief portion of the CARE Act. Can you tell us a little bit how that works, especially related to student loan forgiveness and potential IRA withdrawal allowed?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question. You said the individual rate?
In the individual relief portion of the CARE Act, can you tell us a little bit more about it, how it works, especially related to student loan forgiveness or potential IRA withdrawal?
And the one thing I know about that is, with regards to student loans, it's all just federal student loans. I'm not sure I know much about the relief that goes with that. Everything that is addressed in that loan in the act is relating to federal loans. And so I believe that if you do have federal loans, your federal loans provider or whoever is managing that would have sent an individual letter or some notification to you about just there is a hold on a deferral, it's a deferment, right? But during this deferment time, I believe that the interest is not it's not being charged to the student loans. So that's the only thing I know about that aspect of it. I'm not sure I can speak to the rest of the programs that was asking that question.
Okay, and also, obviously, currently in this current time we are in, community members have a lot of questions related to legal aspect. Could you talk a little bit about your legal clinic and how people can have pro bono legal advice, especially around unemployment? What additional service can you guys offer to help people in this current environment?
Yes. So as Papa mentioned, I am the chair of the ALG African Legal ALG Legal Committee. And what that does, what we do is every third Monday of the month, we do a free legal clinic where anybody in the community in Colorado essentially can call in through, again, we did our first one virtually last week or early this week. I can't remember what day it is anymore. But now we're going virtual, but anybody can call in. We have a group of volunteer attorneys that show up, are willing to help and call in with their questions. And that's free to anybody that does show up. We have issues ranging from criminal law to employment law to immigration law, you name it, business. And we'll try to provide as much as we can resources for individuals specific to their questions and to their issues. Prior to this COVID pandemic, we also have been running a forum, a legal forum that addresses much more of on a larger scale issues that were a specific issue that's been run into in the community. Issues like just addressing issues such as immigration or family law matters, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure again how this will continue to be run given what's going on and the other programs that we have now. But that's something that we also do and would like to continue at some point once this goes on.
Thank you so much, Tayo. And as Tayo mentioned, with the legal clinic, and it's designed to really help answer related to legal issue, and the lawyer will give pro bono legal advice on during this legal clinic related to immigration, related to work, family, whatever the case might be. So highly recommend for you to share it with the community. So if you know of anybody that need to reach out to a lawyer, but also Tayo also can help guide people that need to fill out unemployment in this current environment, and will be sharing also his information. And once again, I just want to put emphasize on, if you have not registered, that's the only way we can get your information, so we can share with you all the information. So this brings us to the end of our presentation. But I want to end by first and foremost saying thank you to all of you that took your time in this current environment to come, not only to get information, but it's more like to serve the community. Because we know some of the information that you gather here, even if it might not be relevant to you, we know that you will go and pass it on to people. In this current environment that we are in order to bring solution or have a positive impact, we cannot let one person or one group to do it. We're all going to need to come together as a community at large and really look out for one another. And all we ask of every single person that took the time to attend the conference, anybody that you know that is struggling, there's a lot of people that are struggling out there. Some of the kids need to have computer to do their online schooling. They don't have access to it. Yesterday, we were out delivering food to family. Believe it or not, some family are struggling to have access to food. So some people don't have access to internet. Some people cannot pay their rent. Some people cannot pay their utility bill. So there are so many people out there. So this is not the time that for us to, to have a deaf ear. We need to pay attention to every single situation. And the expectation is not for you to try to solve it alone. The expectation is to bring the issue to a platform like the African Leadership Group. Share it with us. I promise you we'll activate all the resources we have to make sure that person is taken care of. So now, also we need help. We need more volunteers. We need more people that have expertise in specific area. So the Health and Wellness Committee is planning to have a similar forum to address the issue of COVID-19. We know in our community, practicing social distancing can be challenging because some of us will live in a 2-bedroom apartment and we could be 4 or 5 or 6 people sharing it. So practicing social distancing can be challenging. We know that most of our people don't have insurance. Some don't have access to testing. So I think it's very important that we come together to educate, inform, and bring the seriousness of this committee. So please, if you have any question, reach out to us. We wish we could really open it up so we can all talk, but if you have about 100 or more people on an online virtual, it can be very, very challenging to engage in the conversation. Believe me, we would love to hear your vote, your beautiful voices, but in this setting, it is a little bit more challenging. But we want to thank you. We want to thank the congressmen, speakers. We really want to thank you. I see Tayo raising your hand. You want to add something? Please go ahead.
Sorry, Papa, to interrupt. One thing I forgot to mention, and you did mention about the unemployment issues. If anybody has unemployment questions, certainly feel free to contact me. But I also want to let everybody know the Department of Unemployment Insurance Benefits has also been starting to hold some virtual town hall meetings where anybody can log into. And the next one is next Monday, April 20th at 9:15 a.m. And so there's information on the CDLE Unemployment Insurance Benefits website. If anybody wants to go there and they can register, and that way they also provide information and an opportunity to email specific questions